Good morning, students. Welcome to the class. So, what was the previous class? If you can remember this photograph, this is dysplasia. Dysplasia, that means the cells with malignant features present in the epithelium but have not crossed the basement membrane. Okay, so that is dysplasia. So, this I told you, everyone should remember microscopic picture of a squamous cell carcinoma because you are seeing keratin pearls. This is endometrium proliferative phase, endometrium secretory phase because tortuous glands, edematous stroma, lumen showing secretions. This is a picture of adenomyosis, endometrium present within the myometrium. Okay, so today coming to the next topic, endometrial hyperplasia. So I think you remember what is hyperplasia. If you don't remember, go back to the first chapter, cellular adaptations, read what is hyperplasia. Hyperplasia is important cause of abnormal uterine bleeding, and important feature is increased gland to stromal ratio. That means increased glands. Okay, so there is increased ratio between glands and stroma when you look under microscope, and it is considered precursor for endometrial carcinoma. So that's why it is an important lesion. It is a precursor for endometrial carcinoma, and it is linked to prolonged estrogen stimulation. Okay, any condition leading to prolonged exposure of a reproductive aged woman to estrogen, even reproductive or even postmenopausal. Okay. So conditions like PCOD, ovarian tumors producing estrogen, estrogen being taken as a tablets, prolonged duration, obesity are some of the common causes of endometrial hyperplasia. So there are two types of endometrial hyperplasia, non-atypical and atypical. In non-atypical, it is a low-grade condition. The glands are usually of various sizes and shapes, and mostly cystic glands are seen. The glands are lined by normal proliferative type of endometrium, and it has a risk of going in for adenocarcinoma by about only 1 to 3%. Whereas in case of atypical endometrial hyperplasia, the chance of going into endometrial adenocarcinoma increases to 23 to 48%. Okay, so remember, atypical endometrial hyperplasia is considered endometrial intraepithelial neoplasm. That means carcinoma in situ. The glands here are irregular and even complex pattern. The nucleus is atypical and with open chromatin and prominent nucleoli. Okay, I'll show you the photograph. So what is this? This is endometrium showing you dilated cystic glands, and you can note that there is increased ratio of glands to the stroma. Okay, if you see the area occupied by the glands, it is almost more than 50%. Okay, so that's why it is increased gland to stromal ratio and dilated cystic glands, various sizes and shapes of glands. So that's why it is non-atypical hyperplasia. So when you call it atypical hyperplasia, when the glands are irregular in shape and the glands are lined by atypical cells showing hypochromatic nuclei, and see the chromatin, open chromatin with prominent nucleoli. You can see the arrow showing you the prominent nucleolus and open chromatin. Open chromatin means coarse chromatin. So now coming to malignant tumors of endometrium. Carcinoma endometrium usually seen in postmenopausal women, also presents as a postmenopausal bleeding, usually seen in the age group of 55 to 65 years, and it is rare below 40 years. Risk factors are obesity, diabetes, hypertension, infertility, and remember estrogen exposure, unopposed estrogen exposure, prolonged estrogen exposure. Again, there are two types of endometrial carcinoma, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 usually occurs in the background of endometrial hyperplasia that I have told you previously. Okay, so whereas type 2 is associated with endometrial atrophy instead of hyperplasia, and also in a thin physique. Okay, the patients here are thin, whereas in case of type 1 they are obese. So type 1 has a better prognosis compared to type 2. The glands here are well differentiated, and the mutations that occur here are PTEN, MLH, KRAS type of mutations, whereas mutations seen in type 2 are P53 mutations, and type 2 carries bad prognosis. Grossly, endometrial carcinoma can present as a polypoid mass or a diffuse involvement of the endometrium. So this is a photograph showing you endometrial carcinoma. So it's very clear, it is involving whole of the endometrial cavity, so it is diffuse. Again, one more diffuse involvement of the endometrium. Histologically, endometrial carcinomas can be divided into three grades. Well differentiated, grade 1, moderately differentiated, grade 2, poorly differentiated, grade 3. Okay, so when you see only glandular arrangement of the tumor cells, it is called as well differentiated. So when you see solid sheets of cells, then you have to differentiate into moderately or poorly. If more than 50% of the tumor is occupied by solid sheets of cells, it is poorly differentiated. If the solid sheets are only around 50% or less than 50% of the tumor, it is moderately differentiated. Okay, so remember. So you can tell me the two different types of endometrial carcinoma. Endometrial type to the left side where you can see the glands, and to the right side is the type 2 resembling ovarian serous carcinoma. Ovarian serous carcinoma where the tumor will show complex papillary branching lined by columnar epithelium. So showing you grade 1 type of endometrial carcinoma. Grade 1 because whole of the tumor is showing only glands, there are no solid areas. So here you can see bit of solid areas in the center. You can see there is no lumen in the center. You can see the cells in a sheet like pattern, so it is grade 2. When you see more than 50% of solid areas, it becomes grade 3. Then coming to staging. Stage 1 when carcinoma is confined to the uterus. Stage 2 when it involves cervix. Stage 3 extends outside the uterus but not outside the true pelvis. When it goes out of true pelvis, it is called as stage 4. It becomes stage 4. And also when it involves a mucosa of bladder or rectum, it becomes stage 4. Tumors of endometrial stroma, they are rare. You can just remember the names. Carcinosarcoma, also called as malignant mixed Mullerian tumor, adenosarcoma, and stromal neoplasms like benign stromal nodule and stromal sarcoma, which is malignant counterpart. So that's about endometrium. Now coming to the myometrial tumors. Most common tumor of the myometrium is leiomyoma. Okay, leiomyoma is said to be very common. Okay, around 75% of the reproductive women will have leiomyomas or fibroids, but most of them may not have any symptoms. Grossly, they are well circumscribed. You can see grossly they are well circumscribed. Okay, so if they are present very close to the mucosa, it becomes submucosal fibroid. If it becomes very close to the serosa, it becomes subserosal fibroid. Cut section will show whorled appearance. Okay, microscopically you will see spindle cells arranged in bundles. You can see the spindle cells arranged in bundles. Okay, so which gives whorled appearance on gross. Clinical features are abnormal bleeding or urinary frequency because of compression of the bladder, or it can be a sudden pain, or it can present as infertility because the fallopian tubes may be altered. In pregnant women, it may cause spontaneous abortion, fetal malpresentations, and even postpartum hemorrhage. Now coming to leiomyosarcoma, okay, malignant tumor of smooth muscle, leiomyosarcoma. So remember, they are usually de novo, that means spontaneous. Okay, so tumors, malignant tumors arising from leiomyoma, that is benign tumors, is bit rare. Okay, and the age group that is seen is 40 to 60 years, leiomyosarcomas. How do you diagnose leiomyosarcoma? Mitotic figures. Okay, so important to diagnose leiomyosarcoma is presence of mitotic figures. If the mitotic figures are more than or equal to 10 mitosis per 10 hypophiles, then you can call it leiomyosarcoma. Or even if there is nuclear ATP on large cells, then even 5 mitosis per 10 hypophiles may be enough to call it as leiomyosarcoma. Okay, as you know, sarcomas will metastasize through blood. Okay, so that's about myometrial tumors, that is leiomyoma and leiomyosarcoma. Next week you will have a second internal on 24th of June. The syllabus will be hematology, lung and GAT. Hematology includes RBC, WBC and blood banking and hemorrhagic disorders. Okay, so important questions. You can go through these important questions, read, try to make notes for them. Okay, so if you make notes, it will be easy for you to revise for the final exams. So read well. Thank you.